truly love Europe. I love visiting Europe. I love Europeans. I have European friends. I respect the relationship we've had for a really long time. You Europeans do not respect Americans. You can protest and say, no, we love America. No, you don't. We know you look down on us. You think you're better than us. And in some ways you are. You work 35 hours a week. You have longer vacations. You've got this magnificent culture. We get it. But any relationship in which one side doesn't respect the other can't last. This thing where Ukraine comes to the White House and acts like it can tell us what we should do, that's not what the relationship is. This thing where somehow we're on the hook, including for countries that are not in NATO, that was never the deal. Ukraine is not part of NATO. We were never obligated to protect Ukraine. Maybe that was something that Europe wants to do. Great. Europe should go protect Ukraine. We have no NATO agreement with Ukraine. And this thing where then Zelensky then goes and quotes all these other European leaders, they're with me, not with the United States. Great. Go work together. We have 100,000 Americans being killed by the Chinese and Mexican fentanyl and methamphetamine mafias every year. Our kids are not learning to read. We have
we can pause it here, Encryptus.
PTSD.
Good evening, everybody. First things before I get into the rant, I'm just going to, everybody knows I'm on the road. And so I'm doing the stream directly from my computer. I didn't put a filter on that makes me look younger, but the quality of this camera, along with the light that I'm using in the back here, which is like one of these things, it makes me look like, I don't know, like I'm wearing Vaseline on my face. First of all, Schellenberger, the car thing is mine, okay? That's copyright infringement, and I'm joking, obviously. Schellenberger, for those of you who don't know him, Michael Schellenberger, we can share that link to that tweet because it's quite astute. And when I saw this, am I allowed saying my wife sent that to me? I'm not sure. But my wife follows Michael Schellenberger. When she sent that to me, and I'm watching this, I'm like, yeah, I remember movies like Killing Zoe. If anybody's never seen Killing Zoe, an absolute debaucherous movie. I think Eric Stoltz was in it, some French actor. I want to say it wasn't to Quentin Tarantino. It might have been written by Quentin Tarantino back in the 90s. Super violent, bank robbery gone bad. There was a line in it where the scene in the bank when the French guy's robbing the bank and there's an American couple, and right before the American guy gets killed, spoiler alert, he says, if it weren't for us, you'd all be speaking German to the guy in the French bank, to the robber. Growing up, it was the trope. In Canada, Quebec, same thing. We're not American. Americans are brash, ignorant, can't identify countries on a map. Okay, fine. It's fun, it's games, and it's the stereotype that Canada has of America, as if Canadians are much better when it comes to international geopolitics. They're proving right now they're not much better. Europeans, yeah, they tend to speak more than one language, tend to be more culturally literate, probably because within an area about the size of America, you have about, 12, 13 other countries. And so it's by nature, it's by upbringing that it has to be that way. That's fine. Schellenberger's 1,000% right when it comes to, you guys have it not easier, better in Europe. You work less, socialized medicine for however that works. And a lot of that is off the back of what America gave to you, freedom. Because in reality, if it weren't for America, France would be speaking German. Britain would be speaking German. It turns out that they'll end up speaking another language, and that's going to be for other types of less violent wars or conquests that are being waged. But they would be speaking German. And when Keir Starmer comes to America and says, we're the greatest allies. Once upon a time, possibly. Allies, yes. Indebted to one another, not within the same realm of proportionality. And whether or not they were great allies once upon a time, the question now becomes, are they great allies now? And does Europe as a whole, and Britain in particular, respect and reflect American values? It's nice. You get to work less than Americans, take better vacations, have 4-day work weeks, 35-hour work weeks. There's a reason why you get to do that. And part of it is because you're riding the coattails, reaping the benefits of the fruits and labors of Americanism. And so Keir Starmer coming into the Oval Office and saying, yes, we're great allies. We have the similar interests in everything. Could you beat Russia without us? Of course not. Well then, maybe the discussion should be a little different. Schellenberger is 1,000% right. Europeans love shitting on Americans. I can tell you that I lived in Paris for 1 year. Canadians love shitting on Americans. You can see it right now. They love shitting on Americans and yet living under that wonderful umbrella of protection that America provides. Now, in reality, also, that umbrella of protection brings with it a certain umbrella of target. You get too cozy with Americans, and then all of a sudden it's not so fun to be wearing that flag when you travel abroad. But it's an amazing thing. Like it is handouts. You're thankful for them at first, then you expect them at second, and then they become an entitlement third, and then you get angry. And you bite the hand when it starts taking them away from you. So that is, Schellenberger is making an astute point. Watch the video in whole. I don't want to steal all of his insights. They're good insights. Good evening, everybody. So I'm on the road. We're going to be doing Tim Pool tomorrow night. And I was going to, fly in tomorrow, do a blitzkrieg thing alone. Figured instead, take my kid down. We're homeschooling our youngest and turn it into a weekend, what do they call them? Field trip to Washington. So we go to Washington yesterday. And this is all going to loop together with the intro rant-ish type thing. We get to Washington, stayed at my wife, I don't know how she did it, but got an amazing rate on Expedia at what was otherwise a very fancy hotel. And you compare what a fancy hotel costs to what a reasonable hotel costs, and the value added is not there. As far as I'm concerned, so long as it has a nice bed and a good pillow, that's all I need. We went down to the Washington Monument and ended up walking around, and I thought we were going to end up at the Supreme Court, but we ended up at the Abraham Lincoln Memorial. And I get it was impressive, but I'm having not mixed feelings. I'm having conflicted feelings about how I feel about all of this. First of all, look at this. It's amazing. In this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever. Someone told me that his hands in ALS do A and L. I'm not sure if that's true, but I believe it is. And that's me and my boy, who he may or may not appreciate this or even remember it when he gets older, but I think he will. And I think the history that he's learning now is going to be that much more impactful later on. You look at these monuments, and I look at these monuments that they built to humans. And on the one hand, it feels like a form of idolatry. I mean, it's one thing to build monuments to gods, the gods or God. That's fine. That's religion. And I look at this and I say this government is sort of a form of religion in and of itself. The monuments are amazing in what they memorialize. Someone in our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community said they gave Lincoln a massive monument because of how the deep state done Lincoln dirty. And the funny thing is also, we went to Arlington Cemetery this morning. We did a 12, I don't know how, I think it's 12,000 steps. We walked up to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We went down to find the members of a family of a friend of ours. I think there were a lot of people with a similar last name, but I think they're all related. And they say they gave JFK a wonderful plot in Arlington Cemetery after having assassinated him. But it feels a bit like idolatry. It feels sort of like it's a difficult sentiment to express because it feels like this is trying to convince the people that all of the bad things that the government did, sweep them under the rug and make you feel patriotic for what some of us are now discovering were actually the most evil atrocities committed by the government. You build a monument to the man that the deep state either assassinated or facilitated the assassination of and then covered it up. And when we walk through Arlington Cemetery and all of the soldiers and their family who died in battle or who died afterwards, 400,000 servicemen and women and their spouses buried in Arlington. How many of them were killed in wars that should never have been waged in the first place, that could have been avoided from day one, but were not, but for the plans of older men who would never have to fight? Hundreds of thousands. How many wars were absolutely necessary to spill the blood of Americans, or anybody else for that matter, were waged? How many were not? And so we're looking at Ukraine, and you're looking at the likes of, let me see if I can bring up Billy Baldwin. Everybody is in a rush to send your kids off to battle, and that's how you end up with Arlington cemeteries throughout the world. Everybody's in a rush to tell you what you have to do, what wars you have to support, and then you find out how many of them were absolute wastes. Vietnam, Iraq, the global war on terror. I mean, it resulted not only in Americans dying, hundreds of thousands, millions of other people. Billy Baldwin posted it. You just love it because you know that he's posting it from his freaking Malibu mansion. I don't know if he actually lives in Malibu, but it's a mansion. He's in California. People of Ukraine, know that we have your back. The people of the world respect and support you. We are angered and embarrassed by the weak, petulant, thin-skinned, vindictive, ignorant, cowardly man-child Trump. It's amazing that someone can actually do this and think that they are anything but the man-child that they describe. Please accept our apology and know that we stand with Ukraine. You stand with Ukraine. Your apology means nothing unless you go and serve, Billy. You're still pretty fit. They're looking for people. They're forced conscripting anyone 18 to 60. Go to Ukraine. What the hell does your apology mean? You sit there from your Malibu mansion, lying on your back, having your toes manicured. I stand with Ukraine. And it's amazing. These old men who either don't have children or will never have children that will be sent off to die. And even if they do sacrifice their own, that's great. You know, child sacrifice is as old as time. They're very eager to send people to the slaughter. Do you know how many people have been killed in the war between Russia and Ukraine? Forget who you think started it. You think it started in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine? Congrats, you're entitled to be an ignorant buffoon. But let's just say it started then. How many is enough for territory? Not your kids. And then the more that die, it's the gambler's dilemma, the gambler's loss. The more you lose, the more you have to risk to try to get it back. You never get back human life. So how many have died? I mean, the estimates are now like 800,000 wounded and killed or killed. And then you get these idiots. You know, we got to negotiate a peace. But Ukraine has to win. I think it was Chrystia Freeland. You know what I'm saying? You got to negotiate. We got to negotiate, but Ukraine has to win. Having to win and negotiating are the impasse. And you come and say, we'll take some more of your money. Yeah, I know the 100,000 young Americans are dying annually from fentanyl opioid overdoses. And we know that, but that's separate. Oh yeah, it's coming from China, it's coming from Mexico, but that's not, you should dedicate your resources to protecting Ukraine's border. And then they shit on you and call you every name under the sun. Weak, child, man, baby, when you say, I'm going to take care of my own kids first. You guys want to fight a war? Go fight a war. Oh, what? You can't fight that war without us? Well, then maybe you should think twice about whether or not you fight that war any longer. Not one more inch. If you thought the war started in 2022, you have no business in politics. If you didn't know the Ukrainians were fighting with the Nazis in 1945, you have no business leading geopolitics. If you think Russia now, the enemy of all enemies, which was the ally of all allies, when you erected that World War II monument in Washington, D.C., if you don't understand the problem there, you have no business making geopolitical decisions. And how many more people are you going to send off to the slaughter? You go to Arlington Cemetery and there's no number that is too great. They only have 70,000 plots left in Arlington. Before I get into the Canadian stuff, that is the intro. Good evening, everybody. On the road, it's going to be fantastic. Barnes is going to come in a bit. I want to thank our two sponsors for tonight's show. We have Red Meat. Oh, boy. See, well, the one thing I'm missing is damn good red meat. I'm on the road, and all you can get is processed food crap. And it's so bad, the food, that I actually choose not to eat more often than not. But Chicago Steak Company, one of our two sponsors for the night. Right now, Chicago Steak Company has an unbeatable offer exclusively for all of our viewers here. Go to mychicagosteak.com/Viva. You get 4 free bourbon sirloin steaks, a bottle of their signature seasoning, and free shipping on your first order that exceeds $199. I've had the meat. It's amazing. It's amazing. The sauce is amazing. It's as good as you can get. The seasoning, it's delicious. Tender, juicy sirloins, Seasoned with their best flavor, Chicago Company's premium cuts, their beautifully marbled ribeyes to perfectly aged New York strips, exactly what you need for your holiday spread to impress every guest. Hold on a second, I want to show you the actual, they have like the beef chart to show you where they get their meat from and how good it is. Let me see here, I gotta go here. This is the only food pyramid you should ever look at, people. Hold on a second, I want to make sure I get back here. First offer, over $199, you get the free 4 bourbon sirloin steaks, signature seasoning, right to your front door. Each steak hand-cut, aged to perfection. They are freeze-dried, individually packed, ready to eat when you want them. Go over to mychicagosteakcompany.com/Viva, place an order of $199 or more, and you get that 4 free bourbon steaks, the seasoning, etc., etc. It's amazing. Link is in the description. And our second sponsor of the evening, Qualia. You want to feel better and you want to feel younger, you will go to Qualia. Have you heard about Senolytics? And by the way, you know the spiel. I talk about these things with my wife, who's a neuroscientist, and I talk with the companies before I do these. I want to make sure things are on the up and up, and they are. Senolytics. If you haven't, okay, hold on a second. I think about the zombie cells. Aging is something that happens to all of us. It doesn't make us feel good. It takes longer time to recover. It takes you a longer time to recover from a hangover if you do those things. Senolytics are these things. You have these things called zombie cells, and they basically affect the manner in which you convert energy, age, etc. Senolytics flush out these zombie cells from your body, like pruning the brown leaves off a tree to make the tree flourish. It's non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free. Ingredients are designed to work together seamlessly. They offer a 100-day money-back guarantee. I've noticed recovery time is better. I do the detox. I'm on the month 2 of the detox now to flush out the zombie cells, and you feel if I look younger, it might be because of the Senolytics. My beautiful face. The wrinkles are gone. Go over to the website is qualialife.com/Viva. You get 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Qualia, for sponsoring this and actually for making me feel better and younger. Links are in the description. Now back to the rant, people. Okay, I have to bring it up before you even see what's going on here. We are dealing with stupid people. Politicians are stupid people. They are liars, and they rely on the stupidity of others. Mark Carney, we're going to go down the Twitter thread on this one, says, and never will be. And then you have to say, oh, and never will be what? To an original tweet from Yasser Naqvi, who, if you look at Yasser Naqvi, is an MP from Ottawa. Okay, Yasser Naqvi is saying Canada is not for sale. You may not remember this individual. Everybody gets old and he might need some Senolytics. That's Mike Myers on Saturday Night Live wearing a shirt that says Canada is not for sale. Yasser Naqvi, a member of parliament, says Canada is not for sale and says, here's Mike Myers at SNL. Mark Carney is running for the leadership of the Liberal Party, probably will be the next Prime Minister of Canada because he'll swap out Trudeau until they have the next federal election. And he says, and never will be. To which I say, Canada is not for sale, says the celebrity who moved to America to become a multimillionaire, retweeted by the politician who moved to England to become a multimillionaire, and who is currently selling out Canada to China. Virtue signal harder, if you virtue signal any harder, you might get a priapism. Mike Myers was last seen selling his mansion for $17.5 million. This was Chelsea Heights. That's in New York. You got another one there. Mike Myers lists his New York City penthouse for $20 million. I post this, and there are other people out there who, either through stupidity, through malice, or through a little bit of both, say, oh, Viva, didn't you move to Florida? So you're the only one who gets to have an opinion? Oh, I thought you supported free speech, Viva. If I criticize your stupid opinion, it's not because I say you shouldn't have the right to express it or have it. I say that it's a stupid opinion. And when I criticize Mike Myers, it's not because he left Canada to pursue what he thought was a better life in the land of the free. It's when Mike Myers, after having achieved that better life in the land of the free, New York is not much better on taxes, so I can't accuse him of having gone to Florida and benefited from the beneficial tax rate of having gone to Florida. But the man who flees the country to go to the other country, trumps America, to get that better life, and he gets it. And then he gets out there, all of a sudden, all patriotic. Sell your mansion. Go back to Canada, Mike. Go and use their universal health care. And then you get Mark Carney, who's running for the leadership of the Liberal race and thinks that's the messaging that makes the point for the Liberals. Yeah, I'm retweeting the man who fled the country because of its lack of opportunity at best tyranny, overtaxation, crappy systems at worst, goes to the land of the free, makes his fortune, tweets from the land of the free, posts his picture from the land of the free. Canada's not for sale. And this is coming from the same man who is literally selling Canada out to the rest of the world. Highest, lowest bidder. It doesn't even matter to Mark Carney. Globalist shill that he is. Yeah, we're gonna kill energy production in Canada. We're gonna boycott Elon Musk's Teslas, and we're gonna go buy EVs and rare earth minerals from China. While we let China come in and buy up land in Canada, train on Canadian soil, infiltrate our politics, which they have, and not just China, by the way, India as well. And these idiots think that, I'm not saying you shouldn't have the right to express your opinion. On the contrary, express it. I want to know who the idiots are around us. I'm not saying shut up and sit down, you don't get to have an opinion, but maybe your messaging for Canada is so great should not be the man who fled Canada to lead the better life in America. And it's almost a joke, but nobody... What we've achieved now is brain dead levels of zombieism. You got your zombie cells that qualia, prunes from the body. You've got zombieism. Oh, I'm proud to be Canadian. I'm so proud to be Canadian. The ones who are out there saying it have become American. Is he even American? Hold on one second. Encryptus, is Mike Myers an American citizen?
He is Canadian.
Is he also an American citizen?
He is an American citizen, yes.
Yeah, no, I know he's from Canada. The amazing thing is like the Mike Myers of the world, the Jim Carreys of the world, the ones who shit the hardest on America. Well, Jim Carrey shits on America, lives here. Mike Myers promotes Canada, lives in America. And I know that they're from Canada, but it's amazing. Renounce your citizenship if Canada's such a great place. Go back, go buy it, Mike. You're not going anywhere. All right, let's see when Barnes gets here in a bit. I'll read some of the comments. But if I don't get to your tweet or your super chat, tip questions, I'll do my best as well. And you're going to be miffed. Don't give it. I don't like people feeling rough-shuled, whatever. Cheryl Gagey says, I've never been to D.C. Did you go to some of the museums? Not this time. We were going to go to the Aviation Museum this morning, but I figured we were better off going to Arlington Cemetery and having my kids see that. And actually amazing, impactful. He was actually passing each tombstone and saying, thank you for your service, which unsolicited. And it's amazing. And then I went to see my brother who lives not far and have bagel lox and cream cheese with him, and then up to here. The museums are nice, but between a museum in D.C. and a museum in Florida, they're going to be roughly the same, and you'll get the internet's amazing. The internet is the biggest museum on earth. Bill Brown in the house. That was not right. Oh, Bill Brown says most Canadians like being ruled by monarchs. Yeah, there's no question about it. It's an unfortunate reality. Bill Brown also says we need to back out of NATO now before an Article 5 false flag. It's an amazing thing. Zelensky, after taking $177 billion, only mentions that he only got $100 billion of it recently. He's like, oh, yeah, you promised us $177 billion. We only got 100. We don't know if that $77 billion was stolen by America or Ukraine. You guys know how much Zelensky's worth? You guys know that one of his military guys was embezzling $42 million by overpricing military goods and just pocketing the cash? Oh, yeah. If I had to guess which end of it was laundered, stolen from, it would be Ukraine. The entire thing is a money laundering operation. But he comes in and says, yeah, we'll take peace in exchange for NATO and nukes. You dumbass. It was NATO and nukes that started this war in the first place. It's like Yasser Arafat saying, yeah, we'll take peace for the right to return to 6 million Palestinians. And that's it. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That's the problem. That's not the solution. Oh, okay. What do you got? Robert, I hope my email helped you out on Kurt Benshoof's case. Good luck tomorrow. Hope you don't get contempt of court. Okay. Barnes, he'll come in. Actually, let me text him and let him know you. I cannot seem to get that. Look what I've done here.
What I told you about checking your phone.
Yeah, okay, it's the phone. I'm not touching my phone for the rest of the night. I'll see when Barnes gets in here. I've never been to see. Okay, hold on. I want to.
You do have a number of YouTube ones as well.
Okay, well, let's see. You're not able to manually get these down. Okay, hold on, people. Okay. I got it.
Would you like me to pull the YouTube super chats for you?
Yes, that would be wonderful. And in the meantime, I'll see if I can. So I'm tethering off my phone because that was actually faster connection than the hotel connection. And I inquired as to whether or not they had a faster connection that I could pay for, and they didn't and don't. So there was no option, people. So don't call me a cheap bastard. I was going to do it this time. I'm going to read the chats because I can't seem to bring them up. Denise Antu says, David, people also forget that USSR was instrumental to winning World War II. The Soviet Union, yeah. I mean, the whole irony is it's not clear who was the worst dictator between Stalin and Hitler. I mean, Hitler gets the public recognition, but Stalin. I mean, I don't know how you measure the evilness of tyrants. Like, all right, Stalin killed more, but Hitler had much more of a racial target, a religious target. I mean, Stalin was responsible for the deaths of, they say, what, 30 to 50 million people? And he's not even the good guy in retrospect, but he's for some reason not treated similarly to Hitler, because you were using one evil murderous tyrant to kill another evil murderous tyrant. And by the way, people should also ask themselves whether you think USSR was an ally or not in the long run. Russia will win the war of attrition every single time. Okay, let's see if I can do this. There's the lag on my end now is making it very difficult to bring up chats. And I don't want to touch my phone again. I just want to see if Barnes is going to come in here. Robert, I hope my email. See, that is so long. Next chance you get in D.C., try to spot and photograph all of the Masonic Egyptian symbols you can. I noticed that, Dan. First of all, the Washington Memorial. I mean, the monolith, if that's what it's called, or the phallus, is a very, Masonic. I know when people, it's on the dollar bill. I know what people say about that. Okay, but I'm just going to read them because we can't do this. Bill Brown says we need a back out of NATO. Jameson says, Robert, I hope my email. I got you that. Denise Antu, David. Okay, the USSR. I got that. V6 Neon says the UK is effed in the current lot in Parliament, and the civil service alone, the palace, are anti-British. They are digging UK into even more debt by committing air forces UK doesn't have to Ukraine. You are such a great dad, says Thinks Now. We've had a good one. It's been actually very pleasant. We went down to Harper's Ferry, and the water is very cold and very, very high. This is so long. I can't do this anymore. Okay, I'm just going to unpin it and stop doing it. Neeboop says, hey, Viva, nice to see you again. Good is coming. Canada is whack. Also, the Oscars are for, I'm not saying the word because apparently you're not allowed saying the word, I always was saying homos, but it's, you know what it is. Thank you very much. Randy Edwards says, as noted last week, U.S. elected representatives enslaved U.S. constitutional citizens to an entitled and deeply corrupted Europe. England PM just feigned magnanimous as long as U.S. pays for it. Yep. Keefster says, Viva, when you can spend time in West Virginia, Harper's Ferry, the Greenbrier and Bunker, Devil Anse Hatfield's grave. Oh, there's Barnes. Check out my video about Harper's Ferry. We every time I come down here, we go through Harper's Ferry, and we did the hike up the mountain. Absolutely beautiful. Tomorrow we're going to do the Civil War. I forget, Bolivar. I think it's called Bolivar's Mountain. Robert, sir, how goes the battle?
Good. Here in we're both on the road this week.
I'd rather be where I am than where you are. I'll tell you that much.
The Benshoof trial starts here in Seattle, King County. The jury selection is on Monday. The actual trial will start on Thursday. The trial, I'd asked the court about broadcasting it. The court declined the invitation. I thought it was a kind and cordial one, but the court was not inclined. But the court said that anybody can come and watch the trial at the courthouse. So that's at the King County Courthouse, downtown Seattle. The actual trial will commence Thursday morning, opening statements, and the first witnesses Thursday morning in the case of State versus Kurt Benshoof. If for anyone who wanted to come in and watch, always be, of course, proper, respectful, quiet, diplomat. Don't interrupt or anything like that. Always behave well, of course. But for anybody who wants to, that's. It'll be Thursday, and then the trial will continue to next Monday, and expected to go to closing arguments by next Wednesday.
Let's actually just cover this, because I know a lot of us watched it. When the sentencing was happening on that for which Benshoof was already found liable or guilty. It was a misdemeanor, so guilty.
A city case. What they did is they split. I mean, it's one of the worst and most egregious examples of overcharging, and prosecutors are infamous for overcharging, but this case may be the worst example I know of, because what they did is they took a single set of basic facts, which was the state alleges that he made contact with his ex, his son, and with the girlfriend of his ex after a restraining order had been imposed on.
Let me stop you there, because I got 3 questions. The restraining order was imposed upon this guy. His name is Benshoof. In his absence? Did I understand that part correctly?
Yes. What happened is 2 things. So one is that it's the whole nature of how family court is operating now in a lot of liberal jurisdictions. And this is why this case is more consequential than just Kurt Benshoof. The reason why I agreed to take it on at a very discounted rate, being sponsored and supported by 1776 Law Center, was people who are donors to 1776 Law Center wanted the case to be pursued. And I normally don't take these kind of cases unless I'm very confident that the client is innocent of the charges, for one. I've always represented victims of domestic violence, never perpetrators. I don't believe Kurt Benshoof is a perpetrator. And in fact, the evidence supports that. But the other aspect was, it was so, I mean, you're talking about an appeal in one case, a sentencing in one case, a trial in another case. It's a lot of work. We've put in hundreds and hundreds of hours, over 1,000 hours by now into the case collectively, with everybody who's contributed to it. I had some great volunteers, law clerks, interns that are doing some great work, along with our legal team. But it's because of how family law works writ large, and you see it in this little example. So here you have a couple that had a parenting plan. They were never married, but often lived together, taking care of their child. Then COVID comes along, and the legal system in Seattle slowly decides to weaponize ideology to punish dissidents. And, he's someone who's skeptical of the official narrative about COVID, whether it came from a lab or not, back at the very beginning. Skeptical of whether the vaccine was really a vaccine, whether it was really safe and effective for his son or other people. Skeptical of mask mandates. He's a local preacher. He challenged it in court. And what happens is the whole legal system crushes him. And they use the family court often to do so. And an example is when he first goes into the family court, the court recognizes there's no domestic abuse here. The first time there was any here, the court's like, there's no domestic abuse here, and finds no domestic abuse at all.
And now, because the problem is they've not weaponized, but rather diluted the term, because we heard domestic violence, 80 counts. The judge had never seen domestic violence like this before. Domestic abuse, physical. The domestic violence that they're referencing in this is each text message sent to and from his son, correct?
Correct,
okay.
Yeah. Well, words is violence, basically, is how they decided. So they took one core set of facts and multiplied it into like 100 charges, which is not supposed to happen anymore.
It's like it was one thread that extended a certain period of time with this kid. Each one was being treated as an act of a charge. Each one of those was referred to as domestic violence. And whether or not people think it was manipulative, whether or not he's trying to
imagine, like, let's say you go in and do a burglary, and imagine they charged every simple, like they said, okay, we're going to say that when you broke into the house, that was trespass. When you walked into the living room, that was a second act of trespass. When you walked into the kitchen, that was a third act of trespass. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're breaking, and this is what people can look it up. Overcharging. Kurt Benshoof is a classic case of overcharging. They've taken one limited set of facts about him communicating to his own son. That's 90% of them. 10% of them is communicating to his ex or his ex's girlfriend about matters concerning his son. And they've converted that into criminal stalking, criminal harassment, and nearly 100 criminal charges, in which they are seeking to put him in prison for longer than typically rapists and assaulters serve here in the state of Washington. Not only that, in fact, the longest sentence that anyone in similarly situated has ever seen. When you have judges so delusional, like the city judge, who claimed this was the worst case of domestic abuse she'd ever seen, that means she's so ideologically contaminated that to her, opposing the COVID vaccine is a horrific act of abusing your child.
Well, but I'll even steelman it, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing when she said this was the worst case of domestic violence. And I'm like, she's talking about text messages. And even if you think the kid is, the father's manipulating the kid to use him against the mother, like some of the most damning, I'll put it in quotes, thread was where he says, "Can you do this? It'll help me in court. If I do it, they won't take it seriously. Your mother's using you against me, whatever." Standard stuff, I'm sure, is said all the time in a divorce.
Every single divorce in the history.
Each one of those is what the judge was referring to as domestic violence when she said this is the worst case of domestic violence I've ever seen.
Chatting with your kid about games, because most of the charges were those kind of conversations. It was, hey, do you like this game? Do you like this movie? Do you like this thing? Do you like this? That's what almost all, as even the ex admitted, as even the prosecutor admitted. Notice how few statements they could highlight at his sentencing hearing, right? If he had said horrific things, you would have heard them broadcast right there. See, the hard things they could find. Oh, he's contesting the divorce or the parenting plan. He's contesting his house being taken away from him. He's contesting his car being taken away from him.
I just need to clarify it for everybody because we were watching it, and when she said 80 counts of domestic violence, she was there was no slapping, there was no hitting, there was no punching.
Zero. In fact, the only physical violence that's ever happened is against him. The ex has admitted she has physically assaulted him in the past. She's the only one that's ever committed any physical violence in the entire relationship. And so why are you seeing these judges make these crazy rulings? We go back to the family court. The order that was issued was a restraining order, not a proper protective order. That's part one. There's certain specific rules that relate to orders of protection. I would know because I was one of the first lawyers in the nation enforcing orders of protection. They passed it as part of the Violence Against Women's Act. They created federal funding to help pro bono public interest lawyers work in the space. And I was one of the first young lawyers doing orders of protection work throughout Tennessee. And right then was the beginning of the ideological contamination of domestic violence representation. I was witnessing it. I was witnessing feminist advocates who saw this as a means of power, not a means of protecting vulnerable women and children, or in some cases, vulnerable men, because for example, as a whole, women are more violent than men. In terms of interpersonal relationships, the difference is the women's violence feels far less consequential because of the physical side.
The analogy is the Chihuahuas or Cocker Spaniels do bite more than Pit Bulls, but Pit Bulls send more people to the hospital than Cocker Spaniels.
Yeah, exactly. But so you dig into this, and I was trying to defend actual victims, and I could never rely on the social worker network to give me honest, accurate information. They would mislead me all the time, and it was because for them it was ideological. This was a tool to take down the patriarchy and the misogyny. To give you an idea, the girlfriend of the mother, goes on these long rants against Mr. Benshoof about he's part of the white male patriarchy, he's part of the oppressive system. It's all radical rhetoric and language. For example, you know what the Seattle court system considers domestic abuse? Showing your teenage son the movie "What's a Woman" or "What's a Man," the Daily Wire film. He showed that to his son when his son was 12, and that was part of the evidence of abuse that was cited by the courts. See what is it? I've been warning people on the right, don't jump into a lot of the trans stuff about wanting to give the government a lot of power because it's going to green light governments on the other side grabbing that power. And that when you start saying the government gets to decide what's good or not good for your kid, and what is abuse and not abuse for your kid, I want clear definitions of that. There's no evidence at all. Even the mother's admitted he loves his son. She used the son to unravel him.
Well, she the son in the exact same way they are now saying he used the son, which is ironically to get the courts against him.
Correct. And what it is they just have all Seattle's ideology on their side. This is a place what you saw with the judge on this past Monday is that they live in such a bubble. They're shocked, literally shocked when someone pushes back. And at the end, I was just sincerely agitated. That wasn't.
I thought you were going to jail, Robert.
Yeah, it was like, is there no humanity left? No self-restraint? It's like, I get the ideology. I get you want to punish your opponents. Fine. When you're just adding and adding and adding and adding and adding and adding, and then these same people are going to come to conservatives and say we need to change and liberalize bail standards. We need to have less of an incarceration-driven system. Things I agree with them on. I'm like, you're not going to get any conservative buy-in because whenever it's somebody that you don't like ideologically, you throw all those principles aside. You're like, screw it. Let's have maximum prison, maximum punishment, maximum incarceral system of remedy. So they're complete hypocrites and frauds when it comes to these cases. And I've grown less patient with judicial fraud, bad judicial behavior. And when it was like, okay, it's one thing to issue a crazy sentence, another thing to make ridiculous, preposterous statements that show bias. But when you say, okay, I know you're going to trial next week, and I'm going to screw you and prevent you from being able to defend yourself by locking you up pending trial, knowing how difficult that will make you already in a difficult venue. You've got a 80% liberal Democratic jury pool here in Seattle. I mean that's who I'm going to be begging to do some justice over the next 2 weeks. So they already have the game as one-sided as it could be, and they got to rig it some more. And I was like, after they were issued a ridiculous sentence to begin with. Now, ultimately, after that, she came back and put out an order. She didn't come back on the bench. I didn't know what was going to happen. She went off the bench, but you could tell she was sincerely shocked. And it was like part of it, I was aggressive with the tone and tenor, but I was sincere. Like, you're really punishing him. You have had a habit of doing so. You're telling me that you're not biased, and yet you're making statements that no person that wasn't biased would ever make. And I was like, so I'm down those grounds. I'm going to move for due process that you disqualify yourself. And I knew that, she would react negative, but I was just done with it. And wherever the chips fall, they fall. But it's like, someone's got to wake these people up. You have these liberal judges that are in a land of denial, that they are shocked when people second guess. Oh, maybe trans ideology is not universally accepted. Maybe it's not the best medicine or science. Maybe the COVID vaccine wasn't even a vaccine. Maybe it wasn't so safe and effective. Maybe all the things they've been mocking Kurt Benshoof on for years, he was more right than they were. And yet they can't even contemplate this possibility. And the open weaponization of everything. The judges have a lot of power, and they keep using it against the guy who is mostly pro se, just to take away his last little bit of either liberty, freedom, or opportunity to defend himself. I was like, enough's enough. Someone's got to scream at him. Someone's got to yell at him. Someone's got to say something, or it's going to keep happening unabated. Ironically, by the way, 2 days later, the Washington Supreme Court issued a ruling that confirmed exactly my argument to the city court. The Washington Supreme Court came in and said, in a case of a pedophile, a convicted pedophile, said you can't terminate his parental rights. You can't issue a no contact order against him. You've got to go through the termination parental processes to do that. And that's a convicted, pled out pedophile. And yet they're doing it to a guy who they admit never harmed his kid a day in his life. They disagree with the emotional interaction, but no claim that of any abuse ever, of any physical kind whatsoever. This is a guy who never even spanked his son, never laid a finger on his son. His son has filed sworn affidavits and declarations under penalty of perjury affirming that. She doesn't dispute that. So nobody disputes that. And yet he is prohibited from talking to his son until his son is 20 years old. That's what the judge ordered. That's how insane the judge is.
What is she?
The legal system here has lost its mind.
What did she come back with off the bench that we didn't get to see live?
Oh, she wasn't physical. It was just the final written order to the Department of Corrections said less than 2 years.
Okay.
So I think she had originally written an order for him to be in prison for 7 years. The city was requesting 5 to 6 years, depending on how you interpreted it. But they made clear to her that she could give an 81-year sentence. That that was their official pitch at the end. So that's how insane the risk was. And I think she'd originally planned on 7 years. That's why she had to go back, and it took a while on the bench between that and the written order. She had pre-written her order, like most of them have, is my strong suspicion. But she had pre-written a different sentence. And after we were able to successfully argue, you've got literally no legal precedent anywhere in the world to support such a sentence. She realized, okay, maybe that is going to look a little bad. Maybe I will get smacked around on appeal. Okay, I'll come back and make it just slightly ridiculous, or slightly less ridiculous, I should say. So it's still 2 years. I mean, our advocacy helped save 5 years of his life. That matters. That's consequential in its own terms. But now he faces another 10 years in the trial upcoming, because the way they did the city case changes the sentencing guidelines in the county case. So he went from facing 6 months on the county case, even if convicted, to facing more than 10 years now. That's the gamesmanship that they were pulling. And that's what I'm just getting at. It's like this town wants to go around bragging about how the Seattle legal system is so good with protecting criminal defendants' rights, and it's so good about holding prosecutors to account, unless they don't like the politics of the defendant. Then they abandon every single one of those principles. And the scary thing here is what happens if opposing a vaccine for your child now becomes abuse and grounds to terminate your parental rights.
They've been doing this in Canada for already using it as an excuse to strip parents of parental rights, visitation rights.
And that's what this case is all about, really. It's about is fighting for your son and the protection and safety of your son. Is that a crime worse than rape and murder and assault and robbery? Because according to the state of Washington, it is. And and we'll see whether we have jury selection tomorrow, and then there's some motion practice on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then the trial starts Thursday. And we'll give it. We'll do everything we can to defend him and protect him. And if we don't get a good outcome from the jury, then we'll be making the same argument at sentencing and on appeal. Here's the other thing: all orders of protection are supposed to be personally served here in Washington. He was never personally served. They knew where he was, and they just emailed him instead. And so that's a separate issue. Because just having the order of protection in place changes the risk from a misdemeanor to a 10-year felony. And they created the 10-year felony risk by creating all these city charges. It's the same conduct, but they're just adding and adding and adding. And you heard she clearly sentenced him based on things that were not related to the city case. So we've got a lot of unique constitutional issues impacted. It's a hostile venue, hostile jury pool, hostile judicial pool. But honestly, it's pretty much what I've been doing most of my life. That's pretty much what I walk into. It's one lion's den after the other, and you just try to survive.
Well, just don't end up in jail, Robert. I don't think I would have any.
I don't think they want to put me in jail for very long because I'll give free legal advice to everybody in there. But to give an example, they put Mr. Benshoof in isolation right away. He's had no means of helping to prepare his defense all week. It's just we'll see if it works for them. I don't think it necessarily will in the way that they think it will. Railroading people is not a good way to go about justice, period.
Well,
it's where the
seems to be the only way they know.
Yeah, it is.
Robert, before we get into a few things here, I think I can bring it up right away because King of Biltong just popped in the house. Add some healthy protein snacks to your diet. Biltong is packed with B12, iron, zinc, creatine, and much more. Biltong is available at biltongusa.com. Use code Barnes for 10% off. Robert, okay, so I guess briefly, what else are we going to cover tonight?
Yeah. So we still have a lot of other. We got SCOTUS and Trump. Finally, SCOTUS appears to be awaking from its legal slumber. We got the SCOTUS talking about prosecutorial duties and obligations, and it's where I side with the liberals and the institutionalists over the conservatives when it comes to certain aspects of criminal defense in the constitutional context. A big Supreme Court decision came down last week on that respect. We've got all the various forms of craziness concerning Zelensky trying to hijack and extort money out of the United States on a constant, continuous basis by calling the vice president of the United States a bitch in Russian.
Okay.
Global office.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll get to everything. Bro, let's start with that right now. Someone said that he mumbled. Okay, so the news that shook the world on Friday that actually took the attention off Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi must have been thanking Zelensky a whole hell of a lot of Friday. We're going to get to Pam Bondi as well, the Epstein files. Zelensky comes to the White House. There's a 50-minute broadcast or open to the media. What do we call it? Not a conference, but a session. Yeah. I'm not crazy. We had never seen an open to the media session like that involving Zelensky in a while, if ever. Am I wrong?
Well, not involving Zelensky in the U.S. With Trump. We've seen it more in the congressional setting and other settings. They probably didn't trust Biden to do too many of those for too long a time period because of his mental acuity or lack thereof. And so I think that's part of it why. But what's extraordinary is their arrogance. I did a show last week or a week or two ago with the Duran. They've been breaking this down great, both Alexander Macoris and Alexander Christoforou. They also have independent individual channels where they do some great breakdowns, so highly recommend that. But we were discussing that, and they've been pointing out now for years, that Zelensky and the EU is delusional, that they don't have any sense that the British Empire still thinks it's an empire, doesn't realize it's been dead now for a year. It reminds me of Al Gore. That was like The Onion, when The Onion was the Babylon Bee, when The Onion used to be funny. After the 2020 election or 2000 election, the joke was that Al Gore had not accepted that he'd lost. So they had a photo of Al Gore holds cabinet meeting, and it's like his cats and his dogs, and they're all sitting around, and he's pretending that he's still the president. That's the degree of delusion that Europe has. That Daily Starmer, that Trump had to smack around right there, because the day before, Starmer's in there giving his thing about the U.S. British alliance is the key to securing liberty for the world and peace and freedom. What he really means is the Brits need America's military and economic power to continue its myth of empire around the world. That's what he really means. And Trump was like, do you think you could beat Russia by yourself? I mean, everybody started laughing at the guy right in front of him.
He started laughing. He's like, it was so preposterous. It was like, in one tongue-in-cheek question, he puts everyone in their respective positions.
Completely.
I think I found the clip. I'm going to send it to Encryptus.
Well, it shows the example of it. And so then the next day, you could clearly tell Zelensky's been a puppet all along. He's a clown puppet actor of the EU and George Soros globalist crowd. That's what he's always been. And he's literally an actor. I mean, that's his actual background. He played a fake president in Ukraine for 5 years that misled everybody into thinking that's how he would be president. He ran on a peace ticket, said he would enforce the Minsk Accords. And then when he gets in, first of all, he abandons President Trump. President Trump says, oh, hey, congratulations on the election. I'm concerned with where U.S. money is going in Ukraine. I'm concerned with where the connection to Biden corruption might exist. Other corruption might exist. Victoria Nuland. Other names like that came up, and he said, "Oh yeah, he wanted that kind of review and research to be done." Then they used the mere fact that Trump was inquiring about deep state corruption in Ukraine to impeach Trump, and Zelensky went mute. He said nothing to defend the call that he himself was participant on and an eager participant.
You know what? I actually hadn't connected those two dots when I was reveling in Trump dressing him down in the Oval Office. He didn't do what would have otherwise been hands down end the impeachment. No, it was not a quid pro quo extortion scheme whatsoever, and he said nothing.
Exactly. After encouraging and inviting President Trump to inquire into those subjects and topics and have him do so. And then about 6 months later, he decides to abandon the Minsk Accords and go along with this sort of a neo-Nazi ultra whack job wing of Ukrainian nationalism that goes back a century. The Western Ukraine, for reasons of historical coincidence, ended up uniting with the Nazis and other fascist groups in implementing their Ukrainian nationalism. If you want to go back, they didn't even used to call themselves Ukrainian, by the way. You don't have to take my word for it. Just research the Ukrainian nationalist groups in America and in Canada, and you will find that they're, by origin, they called themselves Ruthenian, not Ukrainian. They come from Western Ukraine, but Europe has been messing around with Western Ukraine, trying to use it as a borderland battleground against Russia, dating back to the 15th century. That's what Putin was talking about. When, Tucker opened the door, he goes, well, let me tell you, you have to go back to 1412, that kind of thing. But it's actually true for contextual understanding. And we put Operation Gladio there. So we had all these neo-Nazi aligned lunatic groups that we had empowered and given money and support to going back to the end of World War II. And then George Soros fully unleashed these groups after the Cold War. And you had Eastern Ukraine that was Russian, Western Ukraine that was either Russo-skeptical or anti-Russian. Almost every Ukrainian election between 1990 and 2014, you can see it literally in the map. Eastern Ukraine's voting to be more aligned with Russia. Western Ukraine's voting to be more aligned with Europe. Ukraine ends up dead broke during this time period because playing footsie with the EU turned out to be a bad economic strategy. Culturally, economically, otherwise, geographically, it made much more sense for them to be incorporated into the Russian economy than for them to be incorporated in the EU economy. They would just be used as a source of cheap labor in the EU economy, and they end up becoming one of the poorest countries in all of the world. In that time frame, the deep state uses it as a personal playground, a playground for bioweapons labs that Victoria Nuland ratted out a couple of years ago in a Senate hearing in front of then Senator.
No. They're bioweapons research facilities, and they're nervous that it might fall into the hands of the Russians. So it's only there for our protection. It's not bio labs.
Exactly.
Not bioweapons, bio-research facilities.
Biodefense. That's what they call them. But that's the official language, which is all nonsense. Massive amounts of human trafficking out of Ukraine for prostitution and other purposes. So it really a deep state playpen and cesspool that they utilize to try to sabotage Russia. That after the Cold War was over, you needed to justify this NATO operation that makes no sense. NATO was literally designed to curtail the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact countries expanding into Western Europe. That's it. Once the Soviet Union was gone, NATO should have been gone. We promised Russia that if they would give up all claims on any of those satellite countries, by golly, we would never send NATO 1 inch eastward. And all we've done is send NATO more and more and more eastward until now it's literally on the Russian border. So they've been using, and what is they used the 2014, they staged a coup. They overthrew the elected president. They created a false flag where they blamed snipers on the killing protesters on the Ukrainian government, when in fact it was the protesters that were doing it. Neo-Nazi aligned militias that started out of soccer hooligan gangs in certain cities and areas in the central and eastern Ukraine, whereas in Western Ukraine they had long been present over a century. And they do some of the most vicious. When people in eastern and southern Ukraine rebelled, they did things like literally light them on fire inside a building. This is the great democracy that we're supposedly protecting. The coup completely overthrows any democratic realm of government. Zelensky they sign an agreement called the Minsk Accords. I mean, this is what makes Zelensky's statement so absurd. The Minsk Accords, Russia has always followed. It is Ukraine that has never obeyed the law, never obeyed the Minsk Accords, never obeyed their treaties. All Ukraine does is violate the law and violate human rights. It's all they've done for a decade. And right now, Zelensky's not even a legitimate leader of Ukraine. His term for election is gone. It's over. He has declared martial law. He is a dictator. Legally, he is a dictator. Trump is not a dictator. Putin is not a dictator, not legally. Legally, Zelensky is a dictator. He has banned elections, banned speech, banned press, banned religion, and is kidnapping kids off the street, including people with Down syndrome and people over 60 years old, to die in a deep state war to continue to oppress and suppress Russian identity in the eastern part of the country. That's the reality. And so for him to sit there and lecture us, what happens when Russia comes knocking on your door? Russia has literally never come knocking on our door, you idiot. We have zero risk from Russia. We only have any risk from Russia because of our stupidity being involved in Ukraine.
But we have big, beautiful ocean. You will feel it in the future. When he said that to Trump, you'll feel the pressure, or I forget exactly the wording.
What happens when Putin's on your door?
Well, no, but or it means, what happens when the people we've brainwashed into thinking that, I stand with Ukraine or else, when they start, setting things on fire in your country. It sounded like a threat for Ukraine motivated false flags or terrorism, as it's known in America.
And this whole mythology that's been made up about the Budapest Memorandum, the Budapest Memorandum was to make sure Ukraine did not have nuclear weapons. It was at the demand of the West that Ukraine not have nuclear weapons. And that got reconstrued into, this was really like a security guarantee that if Ukraine gave their nuclear weapons back to Russia, to whom it was always their weapons, it was always Russia's weapons, it was never Ukraine's weapons. It just happened to be physically domiciled in Ukraine while Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. We didn't want Ukraine to have an independent nation to have nuclear weapons for reasons that belabor the obvious. So we asked Russians to take it back. That was not a special security guarantee. Anybody who's dumb enough to read that memorandum and come to that conclusion should have their head examined. So for him to get there and try to lecture the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of State of the United States in the Oval Office, while reneging on the deal that he had promised, that it was the only reason Trump was letting him in the room. Trump wasn't letting him in the Oval Office until he signed a deal to pay us back all the money we've given that criminal. And what happens? He had no intention of ever signing the deal. He only did it so he could get into the room and he could show up Trump advance. And all the little Europe crowd would come and cheer and woohoo, we're Winston Churchill again in their fantasy land version of themselves. When in reality, it's what Trump pointed out. We're not going to war with Russia. This isn't worth a war with Russia. And it's and you need to cut peace deals because we're done bailing you out and letting this war continue to lead to needless death. and that's what's going on, and it's absurd. I mean, the only question is whether Trump simply backs down from being involved personally and says, "Well, we're just going to give you no more money, and good luck with that. You guys have a peace deal. You go do it, and see how well you can win that war without us." And what they're accelerating, what Europe is accelerating, is our disentanglement from Europe altogether. This country was founded on disentangling from Europe. It was founded on we do not go abroad searching for monsters to destroy. It was founded on staying out of European wars. We got stuck in 2 of them in the 20th century. And all the French or the English or any of the others should be saying is merci and thank you that they're not speaking German. Beyond that, we're done. America's finished carrying Europe. And as Vance has pointed out, a continent that does not even value our core values of free speech and freedom of religion and freedom of the press and free elections, as exemplified in one of the most totalitarian, authoritarian countries in the world, Ukraine. So I think all Zelensky did is prove to Trump and Vance that they're done with it. Now, what I did like is people are taking different aspects of the photos from the meetings and they've made them into memes. They even made it to a meme where Zelensky is saying, Barnes said bourbon was going to be at 9. And Trump and Vance, he said, no, Barnes said 9-ish. So there's going to be 100 different versions of that. But yes, muttering under his breath, Zelensky called the vice president of the United States a bitch in Russian. Okay, that's what dumb that guy was. He should be lucky we didn't literally dwarf toss him out of the White House.
I still think Zelensky's 2 inches taller than me, but so there's a meme going around of like him doing coke and like touching his nose. Forget
that's because he's a huge cokehead. Zelensky is a massive cokehead.
It's a possibility. If one had their inhibitions, what's the word? When you relinquish your inhibitions, they might have called JD Vance a bitch under their breath. Let's hear it on this one because there's 2 clips. We'll see which one is better.
I have been to I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour. I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr.
I wouldn't bet a house on it, but
this guy's got so arrogant. He doesn't care one iota about Ukraine. He could care less about Ukraine. He again ran on peace with Russia. He ran on honoring the Minsk Accords. He broke both promises to the Ukrainian people who had elected him. He's now if he believed he would be reelected, because remember right now, if they hold elections, the Russian part of Ukraine isn't voting, right? Because they're Russian occupied territories. So he would have territories that are all anti-Russian. And yet he's still scared to hold an election. Why is he scared to hold an election? Because he knows he would lose. Because the Ukrainian people are tired of the stupidity of this war. And it's only the neo-Nazi aligned groups that are wanting to keep fighting it. Everyone else is like, enough is enough. They're escaping where they can. They have protests having their men dragged into vans and thrown into the front line. They see no progress or any hopeful optimism to the outcome of this. And historically, Russia has been more an ally than an adversary to the people of Ukraine. The original Ukrainian nationalists were mostly obsessed with taking down the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Polish-Lithuanian Empire, not taking down the Russian Empire. That became a very belated concern during World War II, quite frankly, where we successfully diverted it on the Western side. That Romanian Ukrainian nationalism used to be called Ruthenian nationalism to it. But Zelensky's behavior was outrageous and outlandish. It continues to expose who and what he is. Now, Gorka's in the White House now at some level, but I was waiting for Seb Gorka to admit he screwed up at pimping for him. And yet I haven't yet seen Gorka acknowledge or admit that. So I think you look at it and what you have is a situation where the only person demanding peace is the president of the United States and the president of Russia. The president of Ukraine wants to keep the unelected, self-declared, self-anointed dictator of Ukraine, Zelensky, wants to continue to steal American dollars and American wealth and put American security at risk so that he and his wife can continue to go on their fancy jaunts to Paris, can buy their more mansions in Europe and the United States, which they've been doing with our money, and continue to propagate their own self-enrichment and empowerment at the expense of the entire world. So credit to Vice President Vance for standing up to that little midget and his nonsense. Credit to Trump that he really showed some restraint, because there was part of Trump that probably wanted to smack him when he was just looking at him. He's like, I'm tired of you, pal. I know exactly who you are. I know where you're coming from. Quit wasting your time trying to BS me. And so I think that's what we saw. I mean, I think what this ultimately does is push the Trump direction forward faster rather than slower. And in particular, both Hegseth and Vance have now said it's time to re-examine whether we should be involved in protecting the security of Europe. We shouldn't be. It's long overdue that we get out of there. That was an anomaly, that we were a historical anomaly, that we were ever there. It's antithetical to core American values. It's not in the interest of American security. And I think that's where Trump is going to march on. And they think that calling him a Russian agent is going to work again. That ship has sailed. You've cried wolf 8 times before. That wolf cry ain't anybody taking the bait on. So it's only a matter of time. And the only question is, what we really should do is reward Zelensky with a federal criminal indictment for all the money that he's helped steal from the American people over the last 5 years.
But it's so wild, because like people think, oh, the corruption's old and 10 years ago. This is as recently as January. They're firing military officials who are embezzling the money, corruptly thieving tens of millions of dollars. He gets up there and says, yeah, we only got half of it. He only says it for the first time with Lex Friedman, and then tries to suggest it might be on the American side that it's being stolen. I mean, it's laughably stupid.
Well, I mean, I have no doubt American deep state people are stealing too, but he is as complicit as anybody in this. He is the one who played the role of building this fake narrative, of this fake case for a very real war that could endanger the security and safety of the entire globe.
No, there were 800. I mean, I don't know how many are dead. I want to know, like, dead, but hundreds of thousands dead.
Probably over 1 million dead or severely wounded, or their life changed in an inalterable manner. And most of that, contrary to what you may hear in the Western press, is on the Ukrainian
side. Yeah. Robert, before we end on YouTube and migrate over to Rumble people, let me bring up a bunch of the chats, because there's a lot. If anybody knows who gifted the subs, please let me know, because there's a gifted sub in there.
That's awesome. Always a good idea to gift.
It's beautiful. I just can't see who. Oh, it was Linda Siggs is a monthly subscriber. Maybe it wasn't a gifted sub. Maybe there's a new subscriber. Cheryl Gage says, I've never been to DC. Okay, I got that. Denise Ann, I got these. V6 Neon, the UK is fed up. I got that. Dan Vicious, next chance you get DC, try to spot it. Okay, I got that. Neeboosh, hey Viva, nice to see you again. Good is coming. Canada is whack. I got that. Randy Edward, as noted last week, U.S. elected representative. Okay, I got that. Keevster says, Viva. Harper's Ferry, got that. Welcome to the channel. I can't see what. Linda Siggs. Viva, what is your opinion on the veterinarian on pandemic preparations, Gerald Parker? Also, have you had Biden COVID vaccine? Vaxheart was halted by the new HHS. I didn't hear about either of these things, actually.
They were trying to do they're trying to scam the government into spending money on a new oral COVID vaccine. And Bobby Kennedy said, nah, I don't think we need to be spending more money in that direction.
Ratat-Tosk, I can't read, but guys, I'm sorry. In Europe, patriotism was once based on the ancestral tie to the very ground. When our founders came here, they lost that. The statues and monuments are our attempts to remake that patriotism here. That was from Ratat. Okay, and then Alt Schoon says, what are your producers' views on open Wi-Fi and joining the wall of sheep? What are your producers' views on open Wi-Fi and joining the wall of sheep versus buying a 3-watt 5G Wi-Fi hotspot? Also, any comments on possibility of U.S.-funded CP? I wouldn't be surprised about the latter part of that. Would you please consider getting Heather Bishop on as a guest? Let me screen grab this. I would like to hear more about the husband's murder and the actions of his murderer. She has a TikTok and IG account. Screen grab. I have no idea who she is. I want to take on Thursday and go to the trial, but the downtown Seattle is a shithole. That's from Harry Toe.
It used to be great, by the way. Elliot's Oyster House, the old piers. This used to be a great blue-collar port town. Jimmy Hoffa called for a mass general strike here in the 1950s. I mean, Seattle used to have some heart. You can watch movies like Stakeout that kind of capture that old style of Seattle. And what's happened is it's become kind of a big tech center place. It's San Francisco North. San Francisco with mountains and bays, and that's about it. It's become a very professional managerial class town. Give you an idea, a third of your potential jury pool in King County wasn't even born in America.
A third. A quarter of Canada was not born in Canada. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good number of Canadians here, but there's people from South Korea, Vietnam, Africa, Asia, Europe. I mean, all Switzerland, you name it, all over the place. So you have almost a foreign environment that you're walking. Not only is it sort of foreign to the rest of America, that politically, like take the Benshoof case. Benshoof would not have been prosecuted in 98% of the jurisdictions of this country. That tells you how nuts the Seattle case is. And not only is he being prosecuted, they're trying to imprison him for a longer prison sentence than most rapists and robbers serve anywhere in the country, especially in the state of Washington. And it's like, how does it get to that place? It'd be, and like the downtown now is like depressing. It's dark. It's got like homelessness issues, crime issues, other issues. When I was here, it was a happening place. No, this was 20 years ago when I had a federal case here. But it's not as light. You can just feel it walking around. People had told me this that lived in Seattle, that used to live here in Seattle or do live in Seattle. They said it's not the same place anymore.
No, it's similar to Canada. Like you walk around downtown Montreal, homeless, everyone's stressed, everyone's unhappy, and it's not a place to be anymore.
It's kind of like Canada. I mean, Canada used to be like a light, carefree, relaxed place. I mean, I was fascinated by French rednecks. I didn't know those existed. Until I went to Montreal, and I was like, and someone tells you, hey, they're like your friends from, like how you grew up back from Tennessee. They like big boats. They like, this kind of. I was like, oh, this is awesome. These are the best French I've ever met. And now it's oppressive and repressive, and that's the way liberal jurisdictions have become. Seattle is probably the most liberal, democratically controlled legal system outside the District of Columbia. I mean, that's how tough it is if you don't fit the right ideology here. And they believe in weaponizing the legal system for it, but it's reflected in everything. That's the culture, the mindset, the vibe you get in Seattle is nothing like it used to be.
Mad Max makes a very good point. 600 million Europeans asking 350 million Americans to protect them from 140 million Russians. Math doesn't add up. Oh, by the way, someone on YouTube just said he wasn't saying bitch. He was just saying the equivalent of the F word. Still disrespectful, though. That was from...
Yeah, it depends on how you basically construe it. But either way, it's
what someone does after a couple of drinks and they can't hide their emotions anymore. I mean, except he might have had a couple of lines.
And he was convinced. I think somebody on the European side, you look at how the Starmer had come the day or two before, so on and so forth. I think Europe really thought this was going to work. They thought, Zelensky's going to go in and expose Trump and expose Vance, and the whole world is going to denounce them and force them to reverse course. There's no scenario where that was going to happen. J.D. Vance ain't budging for nobody. Donald Trump ain't budging for nobody. Least of all, this little criminal dwarf.
We got, let me read these quick, and then we're going to head on over 600 million. Get Robert Barnes. My wife and I are longtime fans, and we live in Seattle. If you're interested in dinner while you're here, let us know. That is Falling Tuna. Zelensky says, turn down peace. Why couldn't negotiations work? The opposite direction with us siding with Russia. Ukraine would be forced to stop fighting. Europe would be nuts to challenge USA, Russia. Well, the irony in this is that if they want to push America out and to ally with Russia, what the hell are they thinking? Like, if that's what they...
For Zelensky going on about how Russia made all the violations, Russia has stuck with all their agreements with Ukraine. It is Ukraine that has never honored a single agreement it has reached with Russia since 1990. They've welched on economic agreements, welched on military cooperation agreements, welched on everything, welched on the Minsk Accords. And they've even welched during this war conflict on basic things. Like, Russia will say, well, we'll give you 75 prisoners for 3 of ours. And then Ukraine will play some game. They'll get back all 75, and then they'll play games with whether they release the right 3. That kind of nonsense. And so it's revelatory and revealing as to who and what they are. Everything he accused Putin of is what Zelensky is guilty of.
And they killed Gonzalo Lira in jail. We shan't forget that.
An American citizen, journalist, commentator was murdered by the Ukrainian regime, and the corrupt Biden State Department failed to do their job at protecting his life.
All right, I'm going to read these, and then we're going to end it, and then carry on. We're going to get to some POTUS cases and some Amy Berman Jackson. I had to remember which cases she had been a judge in. I remember now. Shouldn't we leave NATO, considering Tyrant Starmer is threatening to put UK boots on the ground, create a false flag? of UK soldiers shot, thus involving Article 5. That's
Yeah,
Lou
we should
Havoc.
get out. We should absolutely get out of NATO. The
Crash
sooner the
Bandit
better.
says FTX Ukraine crypto money to SBF back to the Democrat Party. And then Shape of Evil says little late, but made it home to Rumble, lounging in backyard with the dog and a cigar. That sounds very good. And Pinochet's helicopter tour says, Viva, stop it. There is no downside to attributing evil to a non-human little like Zelensky. Who cares if he actually said it? He is guilty. The constant steel manning for evil is getting tiring. Well, okay. I thought you were joking at first, but no, I will constantly steel man because it's the fair thing to do. Okay, so get your butts on over to...
How nuts Seattle is. Their big protest last week was to support the Ukrainian war.
I was in D.C. Somebody, as we're at the monument, I see someone running at me with a face mask and a Ukrainian flag. I was like, oh shit, they recognize me. They're gonna. Anyways, they moved off. I ran into 3 fans, and it was good. Okay, YouTube, get your butts on over. Let me give you the link to vivabarneslaw.locals.com if you want to come there. But we are ending on CommuTube right now, and here is the link to Locals. And that is it. We're going to get into Supreme Court ruling. We're going to get into Epstein list and Pam Bondi and what you think happened, Robert. And this other one,
Trump's going to be up at SCOTUS as predicted sooner rather than later.
Okay, we're doing it. We're moving on over Rumble and Locals now.